welcome everyone. Today's topic is going to be about life after death, and it is recently that I was reminded of this during a reading for a very special lady who is being challenged at the moment in her own life with circumstances around her, family members who are not willing to let a particular person go. My own perceptions on life after death, those of you who are on my mailing list and certainly have been in contact with me maybe through the videos or in other ways, will know a little bit about my own past. For me myself, it was 11-12 years ago that my 14-year-old daughter passed away. It happened through an accident. And of course I missed her greatly. She was definitely the apple of my eye and a very wonderful, magical child. And of course, for any parent that loses a child, it's as if your heart is being torn out of your body. But there again, as I started to let the pain and the grief subside, time, this is a statement that we all know of, time is a great healer. Time heals all wounds. And in my case, that was definitely, to a certain extent anyway, was true. Unfortunately, we in our Western culture have been programmed to feel that death is the end of things. And many people, maybe you who are even watching this video right now, will perhaps think that, yeah, that's it. Once your physical body dies, that's the end. There is nothing else afterwards. Perhaps myself, let's say about 6 or 7, 8 years ago, I would have thought that too. But I've come to realize in the last, 5, 6 years or so, I should imagine, in traveling this spiritual journey, my own awakening, I started to realize that it was my own perceptions, if you will, that blocked me from understanding that there is more after the physical death. And it was particular words that I started to recognize and understand, and the power of them that were blocking me from, if you will, traveling between the veils, seeing beyond the veils, and connecting again. And these words you're all going to be familiar with because they are pain, grief, hurt, anger, missing. All of those words, if you just feel them for a moment, you'll feel how lower vibrational words they are. And these, I've come to understand, are the words that have held me back, or held me back, in connecting with my daughter. Now, a wonderful experience at a certain moment, like I said, I actually started to ask why me, why us? And the beautiful thing about that is, once we start to ask why me, why us, something magical happens on the other side of the veils. It's like a clarion call to a great many of your guides, a great many of your angels, because as soon as they hear that coming from your mouth, they know that you're ready to start to receive and to open to further possibilities and further potentials. And that's exactly what happened to me. Because as I started to look at those words and I started to open up, things did start to flow to me. For instance, the first, I would say, that was certainly my awakening was the book from James Redfield, The Celestine Prophecies. Now, I didn't particularly understand it all the first go. In fact, actually, it's kind of comical because, during, I should say, maybe about 5 or 6 synchronistical events, culminating when I was actually traveling one day to do an internet business seminar for a group. I think it was the 6th time I walked through the door, and there on the table was the Celestine Prophecies again. Now, I'd been nudged before that to go back and read it again. So even before introducing myself, I blurted out, "All right, goddammit." Oops, can I say that here? It's just an expression, folks, let it go. I just said, I'll go back and read it. All right, you got my attention at last. And boy, they did. And I'm glad they did. Because as I went back and I read that book, it was the beginning of a very magical journey. At a certain point, I then went on to read The Secrets of Shambhala, which was also authored by James Redfield. And that word did something inside of me. I'm sure if you've watched the other videos, you by now already know what Shambhala's done for me. But at a certain point, I actually traveled across to the USA to meet a group of people, to be attuned to the energies of Shambhala. And I started working with them upon my return. And they were awesome. In a word, awesome. They've done a great deal for me and continue to do a great deal for all of the people that I've worked with. But then came a time that I was ready to move on to something else. And I met a very magical person, and I use the word magical here because these initiations took place through the ethers, and it was a magical experience. And this was the initiations into the elements. And as we went through earth, air, water, fire, we came to the last one, and that was the etherics. And as I finished up doing the initiation with this wonderful being called Metatron, to my surprise, he actually shared with me the words, "Ian, I have someone here who wishes to talk to you." And out from behind his back stepped my 14-year-old daughter. Now, she looked just like she looked the way she died, just before that, which you can imagine was a very emotional experience for me and for her in the beginning. And if you will, as we imagined here inside of us, how we cuddled and sobbed and cried and shared so much about missing each other, of course that at a certain point ebbed away. And as she showed me, the words that had been blocking me from opening a doorway to just be with her and just to communicate with her, she showed me all of that. And then she asked me if I wanted to see her as who she really is. And of course I did. And this beautiful light being stood before me. And she became one of my greatest teachers, teaching me how we have all of these soul agreements with each other, how we have multiple backup plans, and that there are so many souls that are working together with us even before we've incarnated. In fact, generations before we've incarnated, these plans were already put in place. So I guess what I'm saying here is, by now, I have no doubt in my mind that after this physical body releases, lets go, returns to the earth, whatever you want to call it, dies, I know for a fact that that's not the end of Ian, and it's not the end of any of you either. In fact, really, on the other side, the only thing that's different is that we, of course, there don't have the ego. We don't have the limitations. Eventually we grow into fullest all consciousness and we're able to connect and communicate with all things. In my journey I've learned that. And in my journey I've also understood the power of the words that I used back then. And I'll gently remind you, there were pain, grief, loss, missing them, and I'm sure we could think of a bunch more of words that really did block me from opening, and I describe it in this way because it's kind of like opening a door for me, and then she stood next to me. In fact, those of you who can see may well actually see her sat in front of me right now. And that's how close you can come to your loved ones, if only you will let them go back to the light, and let them be your guides. And you don't have to be away from them, you don't have to miss them, because you truly can reconnect with them. And for those of you who have a hard time believing this, you know what? That's okay too, because this has been my journey. This has been my discovering that there is life after death, that it doesn't end with this physical body. It has brought me a great deal of inner peace. It has brought me a great deal of expansion. And if there's anything I would wish for you who have lost a loved one, that feeling of inner peace, that feeling of knowing and not having to miss that loved one. Boy, I really would love to give you that. Thank you for listening to my words in this little sharing about life after death.